I'm Kris.
And I'm Wyatt Elliott from Notebook Entertainment.
And this is Horrorland News. So, with there not being that much in the horror news this week, other than a new trailer from Guillermo del Toro, we decided that this week's Friday episode is going to be all of our Review This segment, because we had a lot to say about this super long movie that we watched this week.
The Empty Man. So, I had watched it a few days ago, and I just wasn't sure what to think of it. If my brain was comprehending everything, if I was not correct in the pacing or the directions that it all went. So, I begged her to watch it. And
I did.
Yep.
So this is what this episode's going to be about. So just to give you an overview, like we normally do in our Review This segment, we'll do a non-spoiler section for those who have not seen the movie, and then we will go into a complete spoiler zone where we will freely give our opinions on what we saw.
I promise I'll be good and not spoil anything in the first 5 minutes. Yeah.
This is a very long movie, and it feels like a very long movie while you're watching it.
Not at the beginning.
No, I will say, the first, half hour of the movie, before you ever even get to the title card.
Yeah.
But the first half hour of the movie is, its own little short film, and it's fantastic. I love the first half hour of the movie.
Me too. That's what grabbed me. That's what kept me watching it. And then all of a sudden, it's not that movie anymore. And
it's a completely different movie that then struggles at the end to tie back into the beginning.
And then it goes on this wild ride, which is sometimes fun and really feels like a survival horror video game to me. There's a lot of extended shots of him walking.
Yeah.
And you'll see him get out of the car, go down the hall, into the house, the door open up, walk in the door, down the hallway, find clues.
Yeah, this movie is over 2 hours long. I feel like a full 45 minutes of it could have been cut. That was just unnecessary.
Yeah.
Just long shots of things, and again, him walking, and it's too much.
I really want to ask the director, were you trying to emulate, were you trying to give this movie like a survival horror Resident Evil feel?
Because it did. It looked like you were playing a video game in some spots. And it just, oh my god, it was so frustrating. It was a frustrating watch, because you're like, oh my god, something happened already. So anyway, this is also apparently a comic book movie, because that was the first thing I wrote in my notes is comic book movie ? Because it opens with comic pages, and come to find out at the end it does say that it's based on a graphic novel made by the production company.
Yeah, Boom Comics or Boom something, Boom Entertainment, I think what it was.
Yeah, I don't even remember, because so much happened in this movie, and yet it feels like nothing happened. And I'm not even sure that it makes sense when you even give it a glancing thought.
I've seen it twice now, and I'm still not sure that it's
right, because without spoilers, it's it's part real world, part not real world, and I'm not sure that it makes sense.
Yeah. It's
hard
to explain without.
It's hard to explain without spoilers. So we are just going to go right ahead into our spoiler section, because there's so much to say that I have to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
So we are going into the spoiler section. If you do not want to hear the spoilers, go watch the movie if you've got 2 hours to kill. It's gonna feel like 6 hours. And, so come back and watch this once you've watched the movie. Otherwise, proceed. So, the first part of the movie is fantastic. It opens and there's these people hiking. They get to this chain bridge, and I'm just like, nope. The movie would have been over for me, because I saw that and I would have been like, nope, I'm done. Let's turn back. So it's Greg, Anna, Paul, who's the most important here, and Ruthie. I'm not sure what their relationships are. Greg and Annie seem to be a couple, and Paul and Ruthie seem to be a couple.
That's what I assume.
And there's allusions to, like, Paul is a screw-up, or, like, maybe there's something wrong with him that they've had to deal with for 20 years.
Yeah,
and, like,
you get the sense that these people have known each other a long time.
Yeah, and they're over Paul's shit. So, except for Ruthie, who's in love with him. So what happens is, it's title card, day 1, and during day 1, Paul falls down a crevice after hearing a noise that, like, beckons him that no one else can hear.
And it's funny, because when I first saw this movie, you see him, and it's a static shot, and he's walking towards the cliff, further and further out. And she had the same thought I did. It's like, is he just going to walk off the cliff? And then he falls off the cliff. So it's like, okay, well.
Called it. So, but yeah, he goes down to this crevice, and Greg's there, and he's all like, hold on, I'm coming down. And I'm like, nope. I would have been like, bye, Paul. I'll be back with help, because I can't do shit here. Oh, my God. So, already bad decisions being made.
Well, the way I figured is Paul must have had the car keys, so they had them.
I don't know what it was, but so he goes down there and he finds Paul sitting in front of this skeleton statue idol
really
thing.
Cool
it is really cool looking, but again, I'm like, nope.
Yeah, if I found that in a cave though, or just anywhere in the, I'd be like, nope, just turn around.
So Paul's sitting there, and Greg is like, hey man, and he goes to touch him, and Paul whispers, if you touch me, you'll die. And so Greg quite sensibly pulls his hand back and is like, okay, well that's weird.
I have questions, yeah.
Then touches him anyway. Okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. So they get Paul out of the crevice.
Which kind of sends Paul into like a coma.
Yeah,
like, he kind of like dies in front of him practically.
Basically, but they get him out and they are hiking back, and good on Greg, man. He's carrying him. And they find a cabin abandoned in the middle of this wilderness, as again no one checked the weather because storm clouds are just rolling on in, so they hole up for
they just make themselves
the night at this cabin as a snowstorm blows in, and there's weird noises and stuff. And then title card, day 2, Greg and Annie decide to go and see if the pass is clear in any way they can get out, get help, whatever, and leave Ruthie alone with comatose Paul. And Ruthie starts hearing stuff, Ruthie looks out the window. Sorry, that was the dog knocking. So Ruthie just runs out there in her wool socks and regular clothes, no coat or anything, and starts running towards this figure. And I love this shot. This is one of those, like, slow, artistic shots that actually works.
Yeah, this one's
because
really cool.
Everything is just, it's white out because of the snow. So everything is white out. And it's just this figure coming towards her, and she's coming towards it, and then she stops, and it stops, and she takes a couple steps back, because she's like, maybe not.
Yeah.
And it takes some steps towards her, and so she runs back and closes it out just in time, and we kind of see that it's like this black, shadowy figure covered in veils, kind of like Dementor-like. And so she gets back in, and she's safe. So, later that night, we get, like, she's sleeping, and Paul is, like, creepily hovering over her, whispering in her ear.
Yeah, and he just kind of goes, like...
Yeah, you can't really... I couldn't hear what he was saying.
No, I don't think you're supposed to.
And then he was just gone, and nobody knew where he was. So, day 3, Paul's gone. They go looking for him, and they find him sitting in front of that bridge that... it wasn't steel. It was
like
chain.
A gate.
It was like chain link fence, type of bridge, and he's sitting there blowing in this bone horn that he had brought out of the crevice with him, and they're kind of like, "Yo, dude, what's up?" And Greg and Annie start fighting because Greg's like, "I'm done with Paul's shit," and I feel Greg, I'm done with Paul's shit, and out of nowhere, Ruthie starts hearing something, and she locks eyes with Paul, and then all of a sudden she pulls out a knife, fucking stabs Greg in the back, shoves him over the cliff, slits Annie's neck, she's over the cliff, looks at Paul, and then just slowly walks herself back over the cliff.
Yep.
And then it's just like zoom in on Paul, and then it's title card, empty man.
Yeah.
So that whole thing was its own little, like...
And it's like half-hour
movie.
long.
If it had ended there, I would have been like, that was fantastic. That was a great short. I loved it.
The first time I watched it, with the title card, I was like, oh, I forgot. I haven't seen the title card yet. Like, you just get so pulled in. At one point, you're thinking, is this going to be like a Descent movie where they're just lost in caves? What's happening?
What is this?
Yep. And then, after the title card... It's a completely different movie. Different pacing, different feel.
People, different... I don't even know.
It's now a detective story, basically.
Right. And so, all of that, by the way, took place in 1995.
Yeah.
So now, after the title card, it tells us specifically 2018.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's because maybe the movie was originally produced back then. Because I know this was a holdover from Fox, and then Disney bought it, and then they just released it in 2020, apparently.
So, yeah. So, we're not sure why 2018, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't
It really
matter.
doesn't.
All you need to know is it's not 1995 anymore.
Yeah, it's
modern day. So we open on this sad sack ex-detective who now owns his own surveillance security store.
Yeah, he sells a little lapel cameras.
And apparently it's his birthday because he takes his free birthday dinner coupon and goes to a sad little Mexican restaurant.
Which this is a genuine funny scene. Like, this is an FML moment, you know?
Right. It's hilarious. They're singing, I wrote down, when they sing, "Happy birthday, dear customer." Yeah. I was like, awesome. That's amazing. I love it. Love it.
Good stuff.
And then... So he goes home, presumably, and he's sitting on a bench. There's a girl outside, and he goes to sit with her. And let me just say, I was like, how are we not in 1995 if this girl's sitting here with a Dorothy Hamill haircut? Yeah, for reals. I hate her haircut so much. It's distracting how much I hate this haircut. But yeah, so they're talking, and she's being all mumbo-jumbo about, thoughts can bring things into existence and stuff, and which is a theme of the movie.
Yeah, we knew that was going to build to something, but...
And she, makes mention that he and her mom have some sort of past that we don't know about yet. And she goes, "Can I tell my mom I saw you?" And he's like, "Well, yeah. I mean, I think the answer is yes, because any other answer is creepy. Right. Yeah. She's in high school, and he's an older gentleman. So, yes, tell your mother we were hanging out is the appropriate answer. So, first day for him, it's day one for him, and oh my god, day one takes like 5 weeks. I swear to God.
Yeah, you're watching the movie, and all of a sudden it goes, it's day 2, and you're like, oh,
wait a minute, that was all day one?
Yeah,
Are you kidding me?
And then it continues to happen.
So much. So anyway, the girl that Dorothy Hamill haircut goes missing. And the mom is like, please, help me find her. He volunteers or whatever. He gets on the case. He's an ex-cop, but he's not a real cop anymore. He gets on the case. Goes searching for her and finds one of her friends who agrees to talk for a cigarette, and he tells her to get in the car. Again,
well, it's questionable.
Parked outside a high school, tells a high school girl to get in his car and he'll give her a cigarette, and then, records their conversation. And I was a little relieved when he pulled out the recorder, because I was like, there's proof,
I mean, he's from San Francisco. And
right. Oh my God. 15 times he tells us where he's from San Francisco throughout the movie, which I'm like, there better be a payoff to this. And there is, but it's not worth it. So anyway, so he finds one of Dorothy Hamill's friends, and she tells him about the empty man and how to conjure him, and that's the last time that she saw Dorothy Hamill. What is her name? I can't even remember.
Dorothy Hamill haircut is her name.
I don't remember her name.
Now.
So she tells him basically you have to, in order to summon the empty man, you have to go to a bridge, find an empty bottle, and blow into it while thinking about the empty man. And what happens once you do that is, on the first day, he calls out to you and you can't stop thinking about him. On the second day, you see him, and on the third day, he finds you. Okay, first, stupid.
Well,
Second of all,
I mean,
why would anyone do that?
she specifically says that you have to go on a bridge. It doesn't have to be a specific bridge, you have to be on a bridge. And yet nowhere else in the entire movie do they conjure him by being on a bridge.
Right.
Like in the mountains.
Paul's in the crevice.
There was exactly. He wasn't on the bridge.
They were across the bridge.
Exactly. And then at the end when the cult, spoiler alert, is conjuring him and stuff, are they on a bridge?
But that's where, again, I said this in the non-spoiler part, where I don't think it completely makes sense with the rules they set up. Because I think the bridge is supposed to be more metaphorical because, spoiler alert, they actually created this guy, this detective guy. So I think it's supposed to be more metaphorical, and as he's living these 3 days, it's how he's seeing it is an actual bridge.
That very well could be. That
could be. Is how I'm gathering it based on, I don't know.
And it also could be because the only one that says anything about a bridge is the teenager.
Right.
So maybe that's how the story's evolved within the kid, you know.
So anyway, he goes trying to find all the other friends to verify. Because she also says, oh yeah, I saw her one more time. I saw Dorothy Hamill one more time the next day at the mall. And she was whispering in dude's ear. And I did not talk to her. And I was like, probably a good call. Because it looked really creepy when she was whispering in that dude's ear. Yeah. So he goes looking for her other friends to collaborate. Can't find any of them. None of them are home. We only see him really talk to one parent. And it's a dad who answers the door. And he asks if he's there. And he's like, you've seen him? And he's like, well, no, I'm looking for him or whatever. And the dad just, like, closes the door in his face. And I'm like, weird.
Seems about right.
Glitch in the Matrix? I don't know. Which is apt considering the whole what this is. So he winds up going and finds the bridge where they did this. And he climbs down underneath the bridge. And he finds the other 5 missing kids hanging there dead. And let me just say, I don't know what the appropriate reaction is to finding 5 hanging dead teenagers, but it wasn't the reaction he gave. Because he had, like, no reaction. Yeah. It was more like, huh. Like,
I think, again, that's why it gave me a video game feel to it, because in those, the most horrific thing could be happening on the screen, but the video game character's reaction is just hold the flashlight and look.
Right.
And that's what
he
the
did.
performance
He
was.
leaned out to, because you only see one body, and then he leans out with his flashlight, and that's when you see it's a line of bodies, and he's just like, huh.
Yeah.
Like,
and again, they show him walking on the bridge, discovering the hole, going down
it took
there,
forever.
and again, it felt like an exploratory
video game. It was like
video
a 5
game.
minute. What should have been a 5 minute maybe scene took like 10 minutes. It was ridiculous.
A lot of the scenes are that way in this movie.
Oh my god, it was ridiculous.
Like if you want to know how he got somewhere, they're gonna show you. So.
Anyway, the very first thing, I want to go back, and when he's talking to the mom right after they discover Dorothy Hamill's missing, he goes through a journal that she was keeping, and he finds a flyer for this place called Pontifex. And on the back is what looks like a name, maybe, called Tulpa.
Yeah. Tulpa.
So this is the first clue that he finds, like, hours earlier. And he finally, at the end of day 1, after we've been sitting here watching this movie for 15 hours, is like, maybe I should look into this Pontifex thing. Still doesn't. And, by the way, when Dorothy Hamill goes missing, also on her mirror in blood, it's written, Empty man made me do it. And I just want to warn people, because he did not properly warn me. I asked. Because the cops go, ma'am, by the way, do you own any pets? And they're like, no. And then she asked the ex-detective guy, and she's like, why would they ask me that? And he's like, because they probably think the blood isn't human. And I'm like, are they going to show me a dead animal in this movie? He's like, no, they never show it.
Forgot.
Sure as fuck show it. There's a dead dog body in this movie. Just, So anyway, day 2. Oh my god. So we're finally in day 2. Finally decides that he's gonna... some other stuff happens first, but he finally decides he's gonna go check out Pontifex. And I'm like, God, finally. Gets there. Who's the cult leader? Stephen Root. I was like, finally this movie gets good. All right. let's do this, some Stephen Root. And wrote down, because Stephen Root, he's answering the detective's questions, and he's very philosophical about it, but it's very much like Philosophy 101. So it's a lot of different philosophers' ideas kind of put together, if you've ever read any philosophy. But I wrote down, I was like, why does his babble nonsense make more sense than anything else in this movie so far? Like, I was like,
because
I'm in. Stephen Root's cult, I'm in at this point, because it's got to be better than whatever the fuck is going on in this movie.
Yeah, and again, at this point, you've gone through, there's a movie about some sort of haunting thing at a cave in a mountain climb set, 30 years ago.
Possession, possibly.
Then it cuts to an investigation about
a missing kid. And dead teenagers.
Which turns out it could be a legend, an urban legend, or whatever, a ghost story, whatever this is. So now it's a cult movie.
And there's this kid there, and he looks very much like he wants to be Steve from Stranger Things, but he's not Steve. So I called him Not Steve throughout the whole movie.
So we're going to call him Not Steve here.
Because I don't know this kid's name. But the ex-detective corners Not Steve, and Not Steve tells him that Dorothy Hamill was taken to Camp Nowhere or Camp Elsewhere or something like that. It's something stupid and on the nose like that. And starts talking about how there's hierarchies and they're in it. Some people are in it for 50 years and they're in it for 500 years. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this a Scientology movie now? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. No,
what are we doing here?
The movie's all over the place with ideas. Like, they had 3 ideas for 3 different movies and just put them together.
And by the way, that's all the Stephen Root in the movie. No more Stephen Root.
No, he doesn't come back at all.
So he leaves Not Steve and goes to the Camp Nowhere or whatever. And it is seriously like 10 minutes of him walking around the woods.
I'm telling you, it's a video game.
It's trees. I get it. We're in the woods. You've set up the ambiance. I told him, I said, at this point, it's not even building suspense anymore. It's just making me frustrated.
She was getting really angry.
I was so mad. I was like, something happened. Oh my God.
That actually may have been the video we should have made.
It's
just recording
slower than an art house film. Like, I've seen some art house films that are slow that I love. But this is too much. It's like, dude, just get to get out of your car, get down the path, get to the cabin, and find whatever you're gonna find. Like, I can't.
See, so the difference is in a video game is on your path there, monsters will jump out at you from time to time. But that doesn't happen here.
Nothing. You know? He's simply walking.
It's exploring.
He's walking, and you don't see anything. He doesn't find anything. Nothing jumps out at him. There's no reason for us to be watching him walking from his car for 10 minutes through the woods to this cabin. So anyway, he gets to the cabin, and it's all broken down, and there's this creepy teddy bear and a computer from the 90s. Along with a TV from the 90s.
Again, abandoned place with old dusty equipment that you research through. Video games.
Exactly. And it looks like a video game shot as he's discovering it. So he finds this tape and he puts it in. And it's got the same title as some file that I had noticed earlier at the...
Manifestation, that's it.
Manifestation.
Yeah. And
the same thing had been on a file in the Pontifex offices earlier. So he's watching this video and it's this thing, like it looks like a bald vampire type thing.
Well, it's the color's all inverted and everything, so I don't know.
And it's bad footage.
Yeah, it looks like night footage that's been inverted, so therefore it all looks creepy and spooky. But I think they're just cult members, is what it is.
Oh my God! So he leaves the cabin and walks some more. And then he sees this other cabin across the woods or across the pond or whatever, and there's a bunch of people in hoods.
Yeah, now it's full on cult. They're like dancing around a fire. And
chanting.
Then he starts hallucinating. He sees the fire go into the clouds.
Right, the fire climbs into the clouds, and then you look up, and the stars are all like, and I swear to God, it looks exactly like when I did shrooms.
Yeah,
like, I swear to God.
He's tripping. He is tripping on something, and I don't know if he's supposed to be or what, but...
It looked exactly like when we were camping with shrooms, me and my friends. So all of a sudden, he looks back, and the fire's gone. And they're all just standing there. And they start marching. And I'm like, dude, nope, out of there. And he stands there and watches them some more.
Well, this is a horror trope.
So then they stop as a whole. And there's like probably 100 of them. Stop as a whole. He takes 2 steps back. I'm like, oh, good. That's when you should walk. When they're not making noise. That's when you walk. So, of course, he steps back, crunch. And they all, like, shift to stare at him and take a step forward. He takes another step back, so they take another step forward, and he's like, and that's when he's like, oh no, oh hell no. And I'm like, dude, I hell no, like, 50 minutes ago. And then day 3, finally, I was like, finally, day 3. He's following Not Steve, and he sees Not Steve and, like, 3 other people get into a car.
This is not supposed to be funny.
But it's so funny.
So
then he follows the car. Now, mind you, there's already 4 people in this car.
And it's like...
So they all get in on each side. Yeah. It's a 4-door car.
Yeah.
So... Car, not an SUV, not a van, car.
It's like an old one.
Like yeah, I don't know,
80s.
but it's an old 4-door car. That's what you need to know. So there's 4 people in it: driver, passenger, 2 in the back. They pull away. He follows them. They stop to pick up another person. They get in the car. Okay, cool. So they stop, pick up another person. Okay.
Yeah.
Then they do it again and pick up another person. And at that point, I'm like, what are we doing here? Is this a clown car? What?
Yeah, it's a total clown car at that point.
So then they pull up to where they're getting to, and all these people that they picked up get out. And Not Steve comes and opens the trunk. 2 more people in the trunk. Like...
Yeah, and it turns out they're going to this hospital where they go to visit this comatose patient, and they all surround him.
Right. And it's like, I think... He told me, because I asked him, I was like, is that Paul or whatever?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, yeah, it's Paul. And I wrote in my notes, I was like, is it Paul? I don't know, because it's been 10 hours since the beginning of this movie. I don't know what Paul looks like anymore.
They apparently couldn't get the actor back, or he couldn't sit still long enough, because they have a dummy there.
Oh, it's such a clear dummy.
Entire time
but again, that could be because... It's not supposed to be real. It's all in his head. Okay, so yeah,
that could
we're
be.
getting to that.
Okay.
So, ex-detective winds up kidnapping Not Steve right in broad daylight. No one cares.
Pepper sprays him and
handcuffs him, throws him in the back of the car, and people are just like, la-di-da-di-da.
And he looks around, everyone's just on their phone. I'm like, accurate, you know.
Right. I wrote down, hey, dude, did you grow up in San Francisco? Because, yet again, he tells Steve, he's like, I'm from San Francisco. Why do we care, dude? Why? Why do we care? I told him, I said, there better be a payoff to this.
I was like,
there's not. There is, but it's not. It's really not.
Yeah.
So then he goes back to because Steve spouts off a bunch of nonsense about, like, I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know. Thoughts and manifesting thoughts and
that's the theme of the movie, is basically manifestation of what your desires are, and this cult has figured out a way to manifest the empty man into doing what they will. And
and they need a body that's a conduit for the empty man.
Yeah, because like you said, it's a horde mentality. So the empty man
acts as a transmitter, yeah. That's what
his thoughts to all the cult members. And then you find out, if we're going there, then you find out that the guy you've been following this whole time, this cop...
3 days old.
3 days, yeah. Because he shows back up, he gets back to the hospital, and he finds Dorothy Hamill there. And she's
she's shaving the guy that they had all been visiting in the hospital.
Yeah, which she talks to the nurse at first, and she's creepy as hell. I don't know why she's acting.
Right. He goes, can you tell me about that patient in there? And at first she's like a normal nurse, like, no, I can't give you patient information. And then he's like, are you sure? And she's like, okay, here's his entire history.
But she speaks in like a robotic, creepy, monotone
not real way. Yeah.
So anyway, so then he goes in there and she says he has a visitor and it's Dorothy Hamill, and this is where she reveals everything to him. Apparently he's a manifestation that they have learned to create.
They gave him life 3 days ago, so his sad little birthday in the Mexican diner
was day one
of his existence.
Yeah.
And all he knows, and this is where the San Francisco, all he knows is he's from San Francisco. Like, he doesn't know anything about his life because he didn't have a life.
Okay, I have a question that I just thought of. Is, if this is the case, how did that one cop recognize him?
That's what I'm saying. Like, okay, so...
early on in the movie.
What we're supposed to understand here is... this guy is a real person now because they've created him with their thoughts.
Right.
But everything he remembers is something they made up for him as a background because they needed someone who was sad and full of guilt and remorse to be an open conduit. So they gave him a really sad backstory where his wife and son die in a car accident while he's screwing Dorothy Hamill's mom.
So that never happened then.
Exactly. And that's the thing is during the movie, we see him interact with Dorothy Hamill's mom. She knows him. She alludes to the event. And then when he calls her after Dorothy Hamill reveals all this, she answers the phone and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who you are. Who are you trying to reach? And I'm like, okay, so wait a minute.
Hold on.
Hold on. So then I'm like, okay, is this all in his head? Mm-hmm. And if it is, because there was an earlier scene when he was at Pontifex where he sneaks down in the basement, and that's where I saw the file that says manifestation on it.
Yeah.
And he finds this like group that's sitting there chanting, trying to bring him into existence, I guess.
Yeah.
And the first time we see it, he's up top, sneaking in, observing, trying to find Dorothy Hamill still. And he gets caught by security guards and removed from the building. So now, after his mind's been open and he's revealed to be this manifestation of the cult, he turns around and is now in a door that leads down to the bottom part. And he's now living that exact same scene, but through the manifestation that they had been calling. And when he steps out, he sees himself standing up there. And I'm like, The Matrix makes more sense than this. I don't understand what's happening. Because every time he, like, leaves a room, it's a different room. So now I'm like, okay, is he really real, like she says? Or is this all still... some kind of, like,
because Dorothy Hamill tells him that she set up his affair with her mom, and that was all part of the plan. So I'm guessing none of that ever actually happened.
Right, exactly.
Because, like I said...
But then how did he interact with this woman for 3 days?
I'm guessing he didn't.
He didn't, like, was it, like, a world in his mind that they created for him, and he's just laying somewhere? Because they kept showing, like, in his file for himself that he found...
It was empty.
There was, no, the second time he found the file, remember? And there was that's where all his background stuff was. That's where he found the coupon for his his dinner that he used. And there's a picture of him naked sitting on a random chair somewhere. And that's what I'm thinking is, like, is that really him somewhere sitting in the chair in his mind living this existence that they've created for him to make him an open conduit for the empty man?
Yeah, like, that's what they're not clear on, but that's basically what I'm taking from it is that, so what I don't know then is, so him in the restaurant is real, him in the investigation is
I don't think it is, though. I don't think it is, though, because that's what I'm saying. When he finds that file for the second time and it's actually got stuff in it, he finds the coupon that he had given to the waitress, and he's like, he even says, how did you get this? Like, I don't understand if this movie takes place in the real world or if it takes place in his mind. They did not make that clear at all.
I guess I'm starting to think it's all in his mind then. Like,
right.
I hadn't thought about that. But you're right. Because I guess there is no reality then except for maybe... Because the movie picks up with him.
And that's what they keep saying is there is no reality. Reality is, you're getting...
Because how did he even... get there? Did the girl really disappear? Because that was all part of the story.
Exactly.
So none of that was real.
Exactly.
It's all programmed just to get him to
the point where he's open enough to be this conduit or this vessel for the empty man.
Well, I guess they succeeded then.
I don't know. Over 2 hours of movie and they explain nothing. So, I don't know.
I'm maybe more confused now than I was when I hit record on this
My
video.
recommendation is watch the first 30 minutes and when the title card comes on, consider that just the end.
Alright guys, that's our thoughts on The Empty Man. Thanks for bearing with us watching this, and give it a watch if you want, but we'll be back next Friday with another review.
And we'll be back Monday with our Indie Film Spotlight.
That's right, so until then...
Good night and good fight.
We love horror. Bye-bye.